Clint Walker was declared dead after a freak ski pole accident in 1971. Emergency workers found no pulse, no breathing. He was pronounced deceased and sent to a hospital for further processing. Then, minutes later, something happened that doctors couldn't explain. He started breathing again. What followed is one of the strangest and most legendary survival moments in Hollywood history. Clint Walker was a 1950s and 60s television star, most famous for the hit series Cheyenne, which ran from 1955 to 1962. Standing 6 feet 6 inches tall and weighing about 240 pounds. He was one of the biggest actors in television history. Off-screen, he was known for his massive build, quiet personality, and rugged lifestyle. He wasn't a tabloid fixture or a Hollywood gossip staple. He was simply a working actor who happened to look like a living statue. Then, in May 1971, everything changed. Walker was on a ski vacation at Mammoth Mountain in California when a ski pole pierced through his chest during a fall. The object reportedly penetrated his heart area, and he collapsed instantly. Paramedics believed he was dead. There was no detectable pulse, no breathing. He was pronounced deceased at the scene and transported to a local hospital. But in the emergency room, something happened no one expected. A faint breath, a gasp. His heart restarted naturally, without a defibrillator. This survival story became a Hollywood legend, but few know the actual timeline, what happened in the hospital, or what Clint Walker said about it later. This is a full story of how one of television's toughest cowboys faced death and lived to tell about it, even if he never made a big deal out of it himself. The TV giant with a quiet reputation. Before the accident, Clint Walker was already a household name. His role as Cheyenne Bodie in the television series Cheyenne made him the star of what's considered the first hour-long Western on television. The show ran for 7 seasons and established Walker as a leading man in the genre. The character of Cheyenne Bodie was a drifter and frontier scout who roamed the American West after the Civil War, getting involved in various adventures and conflicts. The show was groundbreaking for its time, and Walker became the face of television westerns in the late 1950s. He also appeared in major films throughout his career. He had a small role in Cecil B. DeMille's epic The Ten Commandments in 1956. He starred in Fort Dobbs in 1958, Yellowstone Kelly in 1959, and Gold of the Seven Saints in 1961. His most famous film role came in 1967 when he appeared in The Dirty Dozen alongside Lee Marvin, Charles Bronson, and Jim Brown. He played Samson Posey, a Native American soldier who was part of the titular group of military prisoners. The film was a massive hit and introduced Walker to a new generation of moviegoers. He continued working steadily in westerns and action films throughout the 1960s, including The Night of the Grizzly and None But the Brave, the latter directed by Frank Sinatra. But it was his physical presence that truly set him apart from other actors of his era. At 6 feet 6 inches and 240 pounds, with a 48-inch chest and a 32-inch waist, Walker had the kind of build that didn't require special effects or camera tricks. He looked larger than life in person. Publicity materials often highlighted his measurement, emphasizing his massive shoulders and chest combined with his remarkably small waist for someone his size. Behind the scenes, he was known to train with free weights between takes to maintain his physique. He had the body of a heavyweight athlete, but he moved with surprising grace and coordination. Many observers noted that he looked even more imposing in person than on screen, which was saying something given how commanding his screen presence was. Despite his intimidating size, Walker was frequently described as soft-spoken, kind, and humble. Colleagues called him the gentle giant. He had a deep, mellow voice and occasionally sang. He came from a working-class background: factory work, riverboat hand, hotel doorman at the Sands in Las Vegas, before landing in Hollywood. He was born Norman Eugene Walker in Hartford, Illinois, in 1927, and had a twin sister named Lucy. He didn't come from money or connections. He worked rough, physical jobs before anyone knew his name. He wasn't born into the industry, and he never acted like a star. He was well-liked but private, avoiding Hollywood gossip and keeping his personal life out of the press. While other actors courted publicity and embraced a celebrity lifestyle, Walker preferred to keep things simple. He didn't attend every party or premiere. He didn't give endless interviews about his personal life. He showed up, did his work, and went home. This low-key approach made him respected among his peers, but it also meant that when something extraordinary happened to him, people were even more surprised by how little fanfare he made of it. His real-life strength, however, would soon be tested far beyond anything he'd ever done on screen. The accident on the slopes, 1971. On May 24, 1971, Clint Walker was on vacation at Mammoth Mountain, California, a popular ski resort located in the Sierra Nevada mountain range. He was about 44 years old at the time. He was skiing with friends and his daughter Valerie, enjoying a late spring trip in the mountains. It was supposed to be a simple getaway, a chance to relax away from the demands of Hollywood and the entertainment industry. Walker was an experienced outdoorsman. He wasn't a novice on the slopes. He'd grown up doing physical labor and had maintained an active lifestyle throughout his career. He was comfortable in rugged environments. But on this particular day, something went wrong. While descending near a ski lift, Walker lost control. The exact sequence of events happened in seconds. One of the ski poles planted into the hard-packed snow at an angle and flipped vertically as he fell forward. His momentum drove his body downward, and the pointed tip of the pole drove straight into his chest. The pole went through his breastbone and entered the heart area. The force was tremendous. Walker later described the impact as sudden and severe, like being hit by a truck. The wind was knocked out of him instantly. He managed to call out something like, "I'm hurt bad, get help," before collapsing onto the snow. The ski pole had reportedly gone about 5 inches into his chest, penetrating the sternum and reaching the heart. This wasn't a surface wound or a glancing blow. It was a direct, deep penetration into one of the most vital areas of the human body. Emergency workers arrived quickly, responded to calls from other skiers who had witnessed the accident, but what they found was devastating. Walker had no detectable pulse. He wasn't breathing. His lips were turning blue. By all accounts, by every measure emergency responders used to determine death, he was gone. Paramedics pronounced him deceased at the scene. There was no debate about it, no uncertainty. He was dead. They covered his body and transported him to a nearby hospital, not for treatment, but for further processing as a fatality. The paperwork was being prepared. Calls were being made to notify family members. At the hospital, 2 doctors examined him and confirmed the initial assessment. No pulse, no breathing, no response to stimuli. Clint Walker, the giant of television westerns, the man who had played some of the toughest characters on screen, was officially pronounced dead for the second time that day. Signs of life. The shock in the emergency room. While hospital staff prepared his body for transport to the morgue, something extraordinary happened. A 3rd doctor, passing by the examination area, decided to conduct one more check. Some accounts suggest the doctor was simply being thorough, following protocol. Others suggest something, intuition, instinct, habit, made him pause and take a closer look. Whatever the reason, this decision changed everything. The doctor leaned in and noticed something the others had missed. A faint breath, a shallow, almost imperceptible movement of the chest. It wasn't much, barely visible, but it was there. Walker's heart had restarted naturally, without the use of a defibrillator or any external intervention. His body, for reasons no one could immediately explain, had decided to keep fighting. The doctor immediately called for emergency action. Staff rushed Walker into surgery. What had been a somber scene of preparation for death suddenly became a frantic race to save a life. Medical equipment was wheeled in. Surgical teams were assembled. The operating room was prepped. This moment became the turning point in a story that would defy medical logic and become part of Hollywood folklore. One nurse later reportedly said, "He was dead. We were preparing for transport when he gasped." It wasn't gradual. It was sudden, like someone flipping a switch. It wasn't a gradual recovery or a slow return of vital signs. It was instantaneous. One moment, he was gone. The next, he was breathing. Medical staff who witnessed it were stunned. Some were shaken. Death is final, or it's supposed to be. But in this case, it wasn't. The medical team had no immediate explanation for what had just occurred. Walker had been clinically dead. His heart had stopped. His breathing had ceased. And then, against all odds, without intervention, it started again on its own. Doctors scrambled to stabilize him and prepare for what would become a life-saving emergency operation. But they all knew they were witnessing something extremely rare, something that would be talked about for years to come. Emergency surgery and impossible recovery. Clint Walker underwent emergency open chest surgery to repair the damage caused by the ski pole. Surgeons worked methodically to address injuries to the heart area and surrounding structures. The operation was complex and high risk, especially given the nature of the trauma and the fact that Walker had already been pronounced dead twice. The surgical team knew they were working against enormous odds. Even if they could repair the physical damage, there was no guarantee Walker would survive the operation itself, let alone recover enough to have any quality of life afterward. But what they found during surgery was equally shocking and fortunate. The ski pole had missed Walker's heart by millimeters. If the angle had been slightly different, if the force had been slightly stronger, if it had fallen just an inch to the left or right, the injury would have been instantly fatal beyond any possibility of revival. There would have been no chance of survival, no moment in the emergency room where a third doctor could have noticed signs of life. It would have been over immediately on the slopes. But somehow, incredibly, the pole had penetrated his chest without causing irreparable damage to the heart itself. It had gone through muscle, through bone, through tissue, and had stopped just short of the cardiac structures that, if damaged, would have meant certain death. The surgeons repaired what they could, closing wounds, addressing bleeding, and stabilizing the area around the heart. Doctors later said that Walker's massive chest and muscle density likely saved his life. His 48-inch chest, the result of years of physical training and natural genetic gifts, had acted as a biological shield. The thick chest wall and powerful musculature had slowed the impact of the pole, absorbing some of the force and preventing it from going deeper. The layers of muscle had created a buffer zone that a smaller man simply wouldn't have had. If Walker had been of average build, if he had been 6 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter, the outcome would have been very different. The pole would have gone deeper. The damage would have been catastrophic. There would have been no recovery, no miracle, no story to tell. Walker remained in intensive care for several days following the surgery, monitored around the clock for any signs of complications. He then spent several weeks in recovery, undergoing physical therapy to regain strength and mobility. His chest had to heal. His cardiovascular system had to stabilize. Doctors initially expected a long recovery period, possibly even retirement from physical roles. They told him he might never work again, at least not in the kind of demanding roles that had made him famous. They suggested he consider other career options, perhaps directing or producing, anything that wouldn't require the physical exertion that acting in westerns and action films demanded. But Walker surprised everyone. Within roughly 2 months, he returned to acting. He was back on set later in 1971, performing in westerns and action roles that required the same physical demands as before. He rode horses. He did fight scenes. He worked long hours in difficult outdoor conditions. For someone his age, with a chest and heart injury of that magnitude, this was highly unusual. Medical professionals who reviewed his case considered it a near miracle. The speed of his recovery, the completeness of his healing, and his ability to return to such physically demanding work defied conventional medical expectations. Clint's own words, how he described the event later. In interviews and written accounts over the years that followed, Clint Walker spoke about the accident with remarkable calm and humility. He downplayed the drama, calling it a lucky moment or a close call. He often said he didn't remember the exact impact, just a fall, and then waking up in the hospital days later. He never panicked, he said. He had no memory of being pronounced dead or the frantic moments in the emergency room when that third doctor noticed signs of life. As far as Walker's conscious experience went, he felt pain, and then woke up in a hospital bed surrounded by doctors and family members. But Walker also described something else, something that added another layer to an already extraordinary story. He spoke of a near-death experience, though he didn't sensationalize it or turn it into a dramatic narrative. He described feeling like he had left his physical body during the time he was clinically dead. He talked about a spirit body that felt more alive, more alert, more aware than his physical body had ever felt. He mentioned sensations like rings of light or ripples radiating outward from his body, as if he were a stone dropped into still water. He felt as if he was being propelled through space, away from the scene of the accident, moving towards something he couldn't quite define. The physical pain seemed to fade during this experience, replaced by a sense of peace and calm that he found difficult to put into words. He said he briefly had no strong desire to return to his body. He felt detached, unconcerned about going back. It wasn't that he wanted to die, but rather that wherever he was in that moment felt natural and right. There was no fear, no panic, no sense of urgency, just peace. Walker later framed the experience as a powerful spiritual moment, a turning point that made him take faith, life, and gratitude more seriously. He had grown up with religious beliefs, but the accident deepened his sense of spirituality. He attributed his survival partly to prayer and divine help, suggesting that something beyond medical intervention had played a role in bringing him back. He spoke about it in faith-oriented interviews and articles, always with sincerity, but never with a kind of dramatic flair that would have made for good publicity. He wasn't trying to sell books or launch a speaking career based on his near-death experience. He was simply sharing what he believed had happened. In one interview, he joked that his big chest finally did something useful as a shield, deflecting attention away from the more serious aspect of the story with his characteristic humor. Even with a near-death story that could have made international headlines and turned him into a motivational speaker or inspirational figure, he stayed low-key and matter-of-fact about it. He didn't write a memoir focused on the accident. He didn't go on talk show circuits telling and retelling the story. He mentioned it when asked, answered questions honestly, and then moved on. This made the legend grow even more in Hollywood circles. A man who literally came back from the dead, but didn't brag about it, didn't try to profit from it, and didn't let it define his entire career. That was rare. That made people respect him even more. Why the story spread across Hollywood like wildfire. When news of the accident first broke in May 1971, early reports in some outlets and fan circles claimed that Clint Walker had been fatally injured in a skiing accident. For a brief period, the assumption was that the star of Cheyenne was dead. The initial reports from Mammoth Mountain were grim. A television star, a recognizable name from one of the most popular shows of the previous decade, had died in a freak accident. Industry insiders were stunned. Fans mourned. The press ran initial reports treating the incident as a tragedy, preparing obituaries and retrospectives. Then, within days, news emerged that he was alive and recovering in a hospital. The reaction was immediate disbelief. How could someone pronounced dead at the scene, with a ski pole for the heart, not only survive but be conscious and speaking with family members? The story created a wave of confusion, astonishment, and fascination across the entertainment industry. Studio executives called each other trying to get accurate information. Other actors who had worked with Walker reached out to confirm whether the survival reports were true. Fans flooded television stations and newspapers with calls asking for updates. When Walker returned to acting just months later, fans couldn't believe what they were seeing. The man was back on screen, performing physical roles, riding horses, doing stunts, looking as strong as ever. It seemed impossible. People who had read about his death and then his miraculous survival now saw him on television, doing exactly what he'd been doing before the accident. There was no visible weakness, no sign of the trauma he'd endured. He was Clint Walker again, larger than life. The story grew into legend almost immediately. It went from TV star survived ski pole accident to he was pronounced dead and came back to life to he died and was resurrected. The details became more dramatic with each retelling, though the basic facts remain extraordinary enough without embellishment. The idea that he'd been clinically dead and revived turned into a piece of Hollywood folklore that circulated for decades. It contributed significantly to his indestructible cowboy image. Fans began to view him not just as an actor who played tough guys, but as someone who was genuinely tough in real life. The roles he played, frontier scouts, soldiers, rugged outdoorsmen, suddenly seemed less like acting and more like extensions of who he really was. If Clint Walker could survive being declared dead, what couldn't he survive? The 1971 accident became a defining chapter of his life story, mentioned in nearly every obituary and retrospective written about him after his death in 2018. Film historians and entertainment journalists still reference the incident as one of the most remarkable survival stories in Hollywood history. It ranks alongside other legendary close calls and miraculous recoveries, but with the added element that Walker was actually pronounced dead by multiple medical professionals. That detail, the official pronouncement of death, is what sets his story apart from typical celebrity injury stories. Legacy, the survival that became a myth. Today, many younger fans don't know Clint Walker by name. The era of hour-long television westerns has passed into history. Cheyenne is a relic of a different time in American entertainment, when westerns dominated primetime, and actors like Walker, Steve McQueen, and James Arness were household names. The show hasn't been in regular syndication for decades. Streaming services haven't picked it up with the same enthusiasm they've shown for other classic television. But the story of its survival still circulates in online forums, fan communities, classic Hollywood discussion groups, and lists of Hollywood's most shocking true stories. It's become part of old Hollywood folklore, a literal resurrection that few could explain, and that even medical professionals found difficult to fully understand. When people discuss the toughest actors of classic Hollywood, Walker's name comes up not just because of his size or his roles, but because of what happened in 1971 and how he handled it. Walker's legacy is not just about his size or his roles, though both were impressive. It's about how calm, humble, and physically resilient he truly was. He didn't chase headlines, even when he had a miracle to tell. He continued working in television and film throughout the 1970s and 1980s, appearing in projects like Killdozer in 1974 and Snow Beast in 1977, both of which ironically involved danger and man versus nature themes. He did television movies like Yuma and The Bounty Man. He even voiced a character in the 1998 film Small Soldiers late in his career, showing he was still working decades after the accident that should have killed him. He received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1994. He was inducted into Hall of Great Western Performers at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum. He received the Golden Boot Award for his contributions to the Western genre. These honors recognize not just his acting career, but his status as one of the last genuine stars of the classic Western era. Walker stayed active well into older age. Later in life, he said he didn't eat beef and preferred chicken and fish, maintaining a diet that supported cardiovascular health. He maintained a healthy lifestyle and remained in good physical condition even into his 80s. He had a twin sister, Lucy, who was reportedly deeply shaken by the accident and remained close to him throughout his life. He lived quietly in Grass Valley, California, far from the Hollywood spotlight, enjoying a peaceful retirement. He lived a long life, passing away on May 21st, 2018, at the age of 90, just 9 days before what would have been his 91st birthday. He died of congestive heart failure, the same heart that had stopped and restarted on an operating table 47 years earlier had finally reached the end of its remarkable journey. But the 1971 accident remained the story people wanted to hear. It was a moment that transformed the TV cowboy into a real-life survival legend, the story that proved he was every bit as tough as the characters he played on screen. Clint Walker was never one to exaggerate or dramatize. He came from working-class roots, maintained his humility throughout his career, and never acted like the miracle he experienced made him special or chosen. He didn't chase headlines, even when he had one of the most compelling survival stories in Hollywood history to tell. He could have written books, done speaking tours, appeared on every talk show, and built a second career out of being the man who came back from the dead. But that wasn't who he was. But the fact remains, a giant of old Hollywood was pronounced dead at the scene of an accident on May 24th, 1971. Emergency workers found no pulse when they arrived. 2 doctors confirmed it at the hospital. The paperwork was being prepared. Family members were being notified. Then, against all odds, against every reasonable medical expectation, he lived. This wasn't a publicity stunt or a tabloid story concocted for attention. Medical professionals confirmed every detail. His heart stopped. Then it started again. A third doctor noticed faint signs of life at the last possible moment, when Walker's body was literally being prepared for the morgue. Emergency surgery saved him when the damage was found to be just barely survivable. And within 2 months, defying every prediction, he was back on set, doing the same physical work that had made him famous. The ski pole had gone through his chest, penetrated his sternum, and reached his heart area. It had missed killing him instantly by millimeters. His massive physique, the 48-inch chest that had been a publicity talking point for years, had acted as armor when it mattered most. His cardiovascular fitness, maintained through years of physical training and active work, had given his heart the resilience to restart on its own. His mental toughness, developed through a lifetime of physical labor and demanding roles, helped him recover faster than anyone thought possible. In a town built on scripts, where every story is carefully crafted and every moment is rehearsed, Clint Walker lived through a moment no writer could have invented. The man who played Western heroes on screen, tough, resilient, unbreakable characters who faced down outlaws and survived impossible odds, became something far more impressive in real life. He became a real survivor, someone who looked death in the face and walked away, not because of script or special effects, but because of sheer physical resilience and what he believed was divine intervention. His story reminds us that sometimes the most unbelievable moments in Hollywood history didn't happen in front of camera. They happened when the cameras were off, when no one was watching, when there was no director to yell cut and no stunt coordinator to ensure safety. They happened in real life, to real people in moments of genuine crisis. And in Clint Walker's case, they happened to a man who survived the impossible and then went back to work like it was just another day, because that's the kind of man he was. The legend of Clint Walker's survival will outlast his filmography. Long after the last episode of Cheyenne is forgotten, people will still tell the story of the television cowboy who died and came back, who faced the ultimate test and passed it with the same quiet dignity he brought to everything else in his life.